guys, it's Reagan and welcome to the start of another reading vlog. This reading vlog I'm so looking forward to because I'm going to be reading one of my most anticipated releases of the year. The final book to one of my favorite current fantasy series and I truly could not wait. I've canceled all my plans. Kinda. And this is what I'm gonna be doing all week long. But the book that is at the top of my TBR, the book I have been anxiously awaiting to arrive at my house, is finally here. And the book I'm talking about is Trials of Empire by Richard Swan. This is the third and final book to the Empire of Wolf series. The first one being called The Justice of Kings. I love this series so much. It's a combination of politics, intrigue, how it's written, the characters, the escalation of things, the like philosophical quandaries. It's just impeccable. And I really feel like this third and final book is going to be an absolute ride. I've also heard from a lot of my friends who love this series that this third book was so good. So I just kind of wanted to make a vlog where I could fangirl with you guys because I love this series so much. I'm really hoping it sticks the landing because the first two books were truly some of my favorite reads in the past couple of years. So I thought it could be fun to document this reading experience together. So yes, welcome to the start of this vlog. I'm so excited to be here. But actually I'm also in the midst of making lunch. So let's work on that together too, shall we? But as I said, and I'm really matching my kitchen today, I am in the midst of making lunch. I love making homemade tomato soup. So I am working currently on the biggest batch of homemade tomato soup. As you can see here, it's just been simmering away and soon we're gonna blend it. And I also have a delicious loaf of bread I bought from the grocery store to enjoy alongside. Should be a lovely time, a lovely lunch experience, and the soup will last me like almost all week, which is the best. A lot of upfront work for a lot of enjoyment after the fact, you know what I mean? And lunch is served. Also, look how much soup I have left. I could not be more excited. I'm about to sit down and start reading, but first I've opted to make an afternoon latte. So let's do it, shall we? Look how cute these beans are. Alrighty, latte has been created. Not quite sure what that latte art is, but it's time to sit down and do some serious reading of Trials of Empire. Friends, I'm here with my first reading update of Trials of Empire by Richard Swan. I have read 110 pages of this book so far, and so far this book is really good, but I do feel like I need to backtrack and talk about what this series is about a bit to give everyone context to what I'm experiencing. And also I feel like this book is going to be very intense and I am already not okay. But the Empire of Wolf series is basically set in a fantasy landscape that is controlled by an emperor. And in this empire, the emperor maintains control through laws and through individuals called justices that basically roam the land and can act as judge, jury, and executioners. They're like souped up detectives, bureaucrats, judges, lawyers, and magicians, because they also have magical powers. So they're like highly educated. They have their own bureaucratic arm in this empire and government, but they're very powerful, obviously, for their ability to, you know, judge people on crimes. And they're also closely connected to the emperor himself, though they're not directly controlled by the emperor, if that makes sense. In book one, we're introduced to our main character, Sir Conrad van Volt, and he is a very powerful justice. And we find him in a small town investigating a crime of aristocratic corruption. Sir Conrad is very smart, very arrogant, likable, capable, but this story is not told from Sir Conrad's point of view, no, but instead his apprentice named Helena. And she's also writing this book from the perspective of the future. So she's sort of recounting and reflecting on the events that make up this entire trilogy over the course of each book. And that layer adds so many delicious things to this narrative and story. Book one is kind of smaller in scope, introducing us to the characters who first and foremost are so lovable. This book is dark and grim and philosophical. Like there's lots of dialogue on like morals and ethics and justice and law. And there's also though like a lot of growth and interesting dynamics between characters. We have like pupil and student, comrade, unlikely co-workers, like all of those things all at once intermix between everyone, and everyone has very distinct personalities, come from very different backgrounds, and it creates really interesting connections and humor and dialogue over the course of this entire trilogy, and seeing characters connect through time is just like so spectacular. But book one, again, is sort of smaller in scope, introducing us to these characters. Helena, she's sort of getting her feet wet as this apprentice, and you can tell though as we're reading it, because again, she's our narrator from the future, that you get this vibe of like, this is everything before everything sort of hit the fan, and that's like very much the case with book one. We're getting a sense of how this world works, how the magic works, all of that, but you also get the sense that like, yes, there's a crime happening in the city, but like perhaps maybe something else is simmering under the surface. Transitioning into book two, everything is beginning to hit the fan, but there's still like a little bit of hope that like whatever is happening can be salvaged, and we move to a much larger, we move from like a small town to a large town, a large city, kind of the heart of this empire, and quickly we begin to see like how much of this corruption has corrupted all of the structures of this empire. We begin to learn more about the villains in this world. A lot of it has a lot of ties to religion. It's very much giving like Templar vibes, you know what I mean? Like hyper cultish religious group using whatever means necessary to force their religion on other people with the goals of having like a central tyranny-led government and forcing their views on like everyone around them sort of vibe. That's like kind of the energy of this fantasy book, and Sir Conrad and company and our main character Helena are like thrown headfirst into this and is like trying to figure out what in the world is going on. And over the course of book two, we begin to see like how far-reaching this plight really is within the empire, and it sort of cracks open the entire world and the entire experience. And it is such a fast read, and it's so good, so intense. Again, like the perfect balance of like character fantasy, combat, politics, and like dialogue, and trying to like understand like complicated alliances and such. Like it has so many different things going for it, and that's where we are entering into book three. Book two ended so well. And book three basically takes place right where the end of book two occurs. And again, we're finding our cast and crew of characters as now they're sort of like trying to do the impossible, which is like book one, small town issue. Book two, hey, there's something sort of happening in this empire, let's get to the bottom of it. Book three, let's try to save this empire, question mark. And what I really appreciate about this book is, again, like ethics, law, justice, morality are very much at the center of this story. What does it mean to have a lawful law? What does it, like, how far will you go to try to do the right thing? Is it possible to do anything you want if, you know, the ends justify the mean, if you will? And very much all of that is at play in this book, and we're seeing our characters evolve and adapt to these questions of morality as we're following them throughout the series. And I would almost argue this series has gotten progressively more grim dark as the reality of the world around them has also progressively gotten grimdark, and it's a very interesting character study. But I've read the first 100 pages of this book. It's so good, and the scale of the plot has just progressed like so nicely over the course of this series. We're seeing our characters have to problem solve in very wild ways, and I just love following them, going to new locations, talking to new people, trying to draw new alliances, and try to uncover what is a very complex plot. We also have already gotten more information and world building and how the magic system works in this world, which is also really cool. Everything has sort of an academic slant and almost like an alchemic slant, I would say, which I appreciate. But I just love Helena. I love how this book is written from her point of view. She's such a great and grounded narrator, and she's funny. And I love to see how all the other characters like interact in and around her. It's so good. That hopefully was like a cohesive and clear overview of the first two books and my feelings about them. Book three, the final installment, I've read 100 pages. I'm very happy so far. There's still so much to happen in this book. I'm really just at the beginning of things, like remembering what happened in book two, kind of getting a sense of where we're starting for the plot to play out in book three. But so far, so good. Also, Glasses haul. I have a Glasses USA sponsorship coming up, and my new frames came in, so I thought I would show them off now as a little A little spoiler alert. I'm especially excited about them because of my sweater I'm wearing. You shall see. These are from the Save the Tortoise collection, which is one of my favorite collections they have because they donate to sea turtles. But look, they're green. Can you tell? Can you tell? They're green. They're like the same color. Hold on. As my cabinets. Anyway, I am a green girl. These are the Greek tortoise from the Save Tortoise collection, as I said. And they're nice. I'm a fan. Full transparency. I completely forgot I was vlogging when I made dinner and ate dinner. And I've since just been laying on the couch. Clay and I have been watching the UK Traders, which I'm obsessed with all things traders at the moment. I won't lie. And you might have noticed, hello, we have newly painted doors in this house. The paint swatches are gone and the paint is actually up, which is very exciting. We've progressed to the cookie part of the evening. We're gonna make some cookies and then we're gonna watch some Hospital Playlist, I think, next. And then I'm gonna go back to reading in bed because I'm very into my book. I read that 106 pages so quickly. I'm like nervous the ride this series is gonna take me on, but I'm ready for it. Some homemade chocolate chip cookies, fresh out of the oven. I made a bunch of dough a few weeks ago. Froze it, and now I can enjoy cookies whenever I want.
It's normal in here.
I'm about to sit down and read. Clay is like investigating his orange. He's never had a sumo orange before, so he was a little perplexed by the outside of it, but you know, we've made it to the next step. Oh, and even Millie's here. Gang's all here. Look, this is what Millie does to me every night. She's like, let me under the covers now. Good morning, everyone. It's time for some coffee. We're gonna do some more reading and then I will update y'all on my progress. Honestly, this is Matilda and I's favorite part of the day. Isn't that right, Millie? We sit, we read, we caffeinate. It's delightful. Hello, good morning. I am here with a reading update. I have read to page 170 of this book. I am loving this book in so many different ways. I'm so happy to be saying that because I was really anticipating this book. And sometimes I feel like I have third book syndrome where I'm most disappointed by final books in a series. I feel like a lot of people talk about the second book, like second book slump, but it's always the third book for me. But so far, so good with this. And there's like so many different parts of this book I'm enjoying. So let's go bit by bit. So first, plot. This book gets like, it's off to the races almost from the beginning. And I also love the escalation, the evolution of the plot, which I mentioned. Like, we're introduced to how the magic works and then some sort of philosophical, religious horror sort of gets mixed in. It's almost like medieval horror, like religious medieval horror cultish vibes for a lot of the fantasy and monster elements, but also that's paired with governments and people who are also evil or kind of acting as the adversary within this plot line. But like the descriptions and the terror and the horrifying feelings I feel when I come across various monsters and we go to various locations is like really well done. And it very much is like medieval religious horror, and it's like, it's working vibe-wise, even though I'm very disturbed. The second part of this book I like are the characters. Something I just really appreciate that Richard Swan does within his series. You will have a cast of characters you will really like, but they're also very dynamic, and Richard Swan isn't afraid to sort of explore the flaws of his characters, and I also feel like that makes them feel so much more real. It's not grimdark in a way that, like, you know, you read a Joe Abercrombie book and you're reading characters who are objectively terrible, but you're rooting for them. It's more like we have a cast of characters who are being pushed to the limit in terms of like surviving, problem solving, just in extremely stressful situations. And they might be fundamentally good, but that doesn't mean they're perfect. And aspects of themselves that maybe are especially not perfect are going to be sort of exacerbated during these more stressful times. And I appreciate that these are explored, and particularly with our main character Helena, because this book is written kind of like a diary in a way. It's like a recounting, if you will. She's so introspective, and the way that she sort of interacts with characters and also looks inwardly at herself as she's sort of processing different situations is just so good and just makes you feel very attached. I think a great example is like Sir Conrad von Volt is a character who is incredibly capable, very, very smart, very powerful, instrumentally important over the course of this empire's like history. Like he's an important guy who's done important things for a long time. He's also likable, but he's also arrogant. He's used to being in charge. He's used to kind of making decisions, pushing people forward. And in his defense, he's done a good job at doing that, and also to like great success in terms of like the empire itself, but also he's arrogant and pompous and annoying at times, you know what I mean? And so you sort of see that at play, and I feel like the author likes to include that imperfect reality of him as not only a dialogue on like not all heroes are perfect. It definitely humanizes everyone. But I also think it adds like layers of humor to certain situations. Like seeing Sir Conrad von Valt get like schooled by someone else is hilarious, because we know, because we're so familiar with these characters, that isn't just embarrassing like it would be embarrassing for anyone. It's especially embarrassing for him, because that is like something he would despise. You know what I mean? We're both familiar with these characters' faults and like good sides, that I feel like, I don't know, the dialogue and just seeing them interact and move in the world is just like so successfully done. Particularly again with Helena, I think her contemplations on herself, her relationships with various characters in this book are just so self-aware that I just appreciate so much. And it makes for like maybe things that are like messy and a bit toxic, like they become maybe less annoying if I would have encountered them in like a different scenario, because like our main character will do something and she's like very acutely aware that like this is messy, for example, or like how she's approaching the situation is like not ideal, but it kind of just is what it is. And like that element of our character like knowing these things like makes her relatable versus frustrating. You know, you're kind of like, girl, I get it. There's a lot happening. You've seen some really grotesque stuff. We're not having our finest hour at this moment, and it works so well. And then also at the point of where I'm like talking so much, I'm just really like, I love this series so much. We're also reaching the point too where things are like really accelerating, like plot wise, and like alliances and the pieces on the board are beginning to shift. Obviously this is a final novel, so like we're gonna need to wrap stuff up, but it's getting really, 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 really interesting. But I just love the inputs of this series. I really appreciate how this book is written. Philosophical, like intellectual, it tries to be as it explores elements of politics, but also it's very much a realist when it comes to the reality of like the horrors of war. And sometimes characters can get really lost in the sauce, thinking really highly about a certain topic when that doesn't really speak to the reality of existence for like everyone in the world, you know what I mean? Which I think is an interesting take too. But yeah, I'm loving this book. I can't wait to read more of this book, but I gotta get dressed and ready for the day. But I wanted to give y'all a reading update because I'll for sure be reading more later because it's so good. Hi, I'm dressed and we're about to make some lunch together. And because I was so on top of my life yesterday, look how much soup we have left over from my tomato soup. So I'm just gonna reheat some of this up, cut up some bread, and enjoy a delectable lunch. I could not be more excited. This will take no time at all, which is also the best. And lunch is served. Hello, I have finished work for the day. I actually have plans tonight. I'm going to a Galentine's Day dinner. The dinner is until 7:30, and I'm so hungry. So I'm gonna make myself a cheese puff snack, if you will, and sit down and read more of The Trials of Empire, which I am loving so much. And I'm just gonna try to read as much as I can before I have to go to dinner. Maybe watch a little reality TV as well. My two favorite things in combination. So reading, relaxing. I'm gonna change into something that's a little more seasonally Galentine's Day appropriate. And then we head out, but first, cheese puffs. Hi, I have changed. I feel like this is my pose of the day. I have read to over the 200-page mark of my book. And this is my Galentine's Day outfit. Here's what we're rocking with. A lot of different red tones, but I gotta head out because I'm gonna be late. Hi, so it is accidentally 4 p.m. the next day. I lost track of time a bit and did not check in and vlog at all. I am happy to report though, I'm making myself a cup of tea. Not coffee, but a little bit caffeinated. I'm gonna try this honey black tea because it sounds so good. I've never tried it before. And I'm gonna sit down and read more of my book right now as well. I'm happy to report, I have read to page 300 and it's so good. Like I'm so into this book. I'm enjoying this ride so much. I have no idea where it's gonna go, but it keeps just like, I don't know, I just feel like Richard Swan's like really good at describing a lot of different things. All of the stuff I've already said about the characters remains the same. Just like, I really enjoy them and I enjoy a lot of the dialogue surrounding these characters, but like, he also knows how to amp up a plot, like rebellion and combat and trying to capture the chaos of like a military moment is also really well done. But then he's also really good at like describing diplomacy and more of the talking aspect of combat and you know, conflict too. So there's just like a lot of really good stuff at play and I'm loving it. So I'm gonna sit down and read more, and then I think we're gonna take it easy tonight. It is technically Valentine's Day. Cheers, happy Valentine's Day. There are my flowers. And I had a hyperfixation sandwich for lunch. Obviously, I will cut to that clip because while I didn't vlog anything else, I did vlog my sandwich. Turkey provolone sub. Obviously, had to get this at least once this week. And some flowers. Drinking tea out of my Valentine's Day mug, which is apt. We're gonna read. We're gonna relax. I think I'm gonna do a face mask here in a minute, shower, launder myself, and just settle in for the rest of the evening as one does, as we should, as what's definitely gonna happen. I think we're gonna do takeout for dinner tonight. What's there not to like about that situation? It's my ideal situation. We're gonna watch K-dramas. Oh, it's gonna be wonderful. It's going to be wonderful. Let's read. Matilda and I have just been hanging out, and I'm happy to report progress has been made. I've read another 60 pages. This book is getting so unbelievably intense. The religious, magic, otherworld stuff that's going on is just too good. It's too good. I'm laundered. I have a face mask on, and we're about to order Thai food takeout. Things are very much looking up, and I could not be more happy. So cheers to that. Oh, we're gonna watch Vanderpump Rules. What a great day. Dinner is here. We went a little wild. We said whatever we want tonight. So we got some soup, got some curry, we got some chicken wings, I got mango sticky rice. It's gonna be a great time. Alrighty, in bed, Hospital Playlist has been consumed. That show makes me laugh, it makes me cry. I'm obsessed with Hospital Playlist. Even if you don't like medical dramas, you need to watch that show. But I'm gonna sit down now and read more of The Trials of Empire, which obviously, as we've established, I'm also loving. So I'm just gonna see how much I can read of this before I fall asleep. It's funny, in another life, I used to read so much at night, but now I sit down to read at night and I fall asleep, no matter the time even. I fall asleep, like immediately. So I now do most of my reading in the morning before work and in the evenings after work. Hi friends, I just got back from refreshing my hair this morning. Loving early AM hair appointment. I have since been drinking coffee and I have been reading more of Trials of Empire by Richard Swan. This book is so good. All right, I'm on page 368. I'm obsessed with this book. I feel like I cannot say anything but good things. Like, I'm so happy that I'm liking this final book so much, but okay, sometimes when you read fantasy, the final book can be the worst one because you're just waiting for plot things to like tie together. And the thing is, this sort of predictability is in some ways unavoidable because when you're kind of leading to like a major climactic moment that's maybe been hinted at, a war, a battle, a taking on of an evil force and enemy, like aspects of that you're anticipating. And don't get me wrong, there is that in this book and the build up to that has been so good. So I really don't have very many complaints there. But what I have loved as an inclusion of this book, and the thing is, how it's being explored in this book is not just well done, but like seeds of it and why it has such good payoff has been present in book 1 and book 2. And it's like the character dynamics, and it's done in such a satisfying way. The moral questions of how far you'll go to save the world, like, are you even still a hero? And it's like, oh man, it's so good. The conversations, the dialogue, the fights that are happening amongst our characters is just too good. And Helena, our main character, I'm obsessed with. Just, she's such a good main character. She's so smart, she's so introspective, and again, as she's writing back on this moment, reflecting on it, she's also clearly had time to sort of process and explore her own emotions after the fact, and you kind of see that insight and that emotional maturity like in the story itself. So what I'm just trying to say is the plot of this book is great. Like the build up to the final climactic moment, twists and turns, political maneuverings, all of the above. I'm shocking, I'm gasping, it's great. The villainry element, like the magic, is creepy, very much like religious horror, medieval sort of situation, as I've already said, Templars, this sort of thing. But the best part, like just sudden, it's like not even, it wasn't even needed, but the inclusion of it just makes this series like just so good. And that is the complex character dynamics, character studies, the conversations around morality, justice, law. Oh man. It's so good. It's so good. It's lunchtime, but luckily, folks, we've already prepped for this. As you've seen, oh, bread, which was put in the fridge. Tomato soup. We still got a lot of it, so we're gonna be enjoying this. Tomato soup is bubbling away. And I'm just toasting the bread and trying to melt this butter a little bit too, so. Ignore that. So I'm here with a reading update. I've passed the 400 page mark. My plan is to finish this book tonight, but I'm also assuming, you tell me, I don't think I've actually given like a coherent reading update in like a minute. I feel like I've just probably been like going on the camera and being like, I love this book so much, which is true. But let's take a step back and kind of talk about why I'm loving this book so much, especially because I've allowed myself to think about it a bit more. So things I've touched on. Medieval horror, and the horror, whew, it's like he is amping it up. He's really, really, really good at writing some of the most disturbing but fascinating and like very like I can really picture it. Like Diablo core, like really disturbing hellscape medieval horror, and it works really well with this world because obviously like the whole setup is there is this fight for power and there is this conflict between powerful individuals, but it's like Templars, they're using religion, a morphed version, a corrupted version of their philosophy to do whatever they want. And alongside that, we run into so many different types of horrors, from monsters both in this world and another world, and the way that they fight and use combat is so disturbing and it feels like visceral. So when you're reading it, I'm like, woof, woof. Something I also want to note is kind of like reflect back on what I said about final books in fantasy series, because I kind of like stand by that. And I wouldn't even say this book is immune to some of the fundamental problems I sometimes have with final books in the series, which is your plotting in books up into a final point. And it's just very hard to like surprise you when it's sort of a build up to a final conclusion. Like you expect there to be a final standoff, you expect certain things. And this book definitely has elements of that, but I haven't found it to be distracting, even though there's been elements that are perhaps a little bit predictable. One could make the argument that this book is kind of split in half. It could have been 2 fully fleshed out books. Like the first part of the book is very much about like gaining alliances, kind of traveling the landscape, prepping for this final conflict. And then the second half is this final conflict. These could have been separate books, and maybe that would have been even better than what we're experiencing. But I wouldn't say like it's been bad that they have been put together either. Like I've really enjoyed the reading experience of this. But yes, one could make an argument that some of the plot lines perhaps occurred quickly, and some of the storylines are maybe rushed or a bit conventional. And not all of them, but maybe some of them. I also feel like it's not bothering me at all because I do feel like there's other aspects of this plot, like outside of just like the pure combat and the politics, that have kept it so fresh and have kept me absolutely zeroed in on the pages of this book. It's the character dynamics. It's how this book is written. The fact that it's written with our narrator being our main character from the future, reflecting back on these moments, adds not only really interesting emotional connectedness, like we are just so connected to her. She is so much, and I've said this so many times, she's so insightful. She's clearly like processed a lot of this, but still capturing the intensity of the emotions in the moment. So we get that like immediate reaction, and then also how that trauma is maybe still living with her to this day. And I just feel like that adds like so much more oomph to whatever it is we're reading. All of the emotions she feels for other figures in her life that she's surrounded by, how she feels about the different things that she's learning, the different debates, different philosophical questions that we have in this book. And then most of all, the incredibly complex figure in her life, who is Sir Conrad von Volt. We've been following from her point of view from book one, and just like the growth, the arc of this very complex relationship is so good in this. And it's approached with such care and empathy to our main character and just like everything that's happening in such a way that I don't know if I've really read a book that so much centered a relationship in such a way, and how this relationship can be like all consuming, particularly when you're in such an intense, traumatic, high conflict situation, and how that sort of intensity would increase through time, like given the circumstances of this book and all of the thoughts that come with that. And it's just amazing. And then I also feel like the author pairs with the combat, which is great, the characters, which are great. Really, like, I feel like sometimes I'm like, he's taken like the principles and some of the philosophy of like the Enlightenment, if you will, like in history, and it's like implanting that in this fantasy book. Like, we have characters who are warriors and who have magic, but they're also like thinkers. They're like warrior philosophers. And so like this contemplation of like, what does it mean to fight for an empire? What does it mean to establish an empire? What are laws? What are the consequences of laws? And like all of these nuances that they're thinking about alongside the decisions they have to make to survive are like so interesting too. I know I'm rambling, but anyway, I'm almost done with this book. I have 100 pages left. I am unwell. I feel like this book is really gonna hit me in the gut, but just like the combination of how it's written, our narrator reflectively, the escalation of this plot over the course of the entire trilogy. It has some flaws, don't get me wrong, but they don't bother me, to be honest. Because like all the other parts that are good, like outshine that, where I'm just like, I can objectively recognize it, but we're past it. Characters out of this world. Writing is really good. I'm loving this series. It's been so long since I've had 100 pages left of, that's not totally true. Like, I've read Robin Hood before and I've absolutely sucked in. But like, this is a new series. I'm just so pumped to have a new favorite author, and I have no idea how this is going to end. I also love fantasy and horror together. I've decided. Particularly medieval horror fantasy, it's like so good. It works so well from like a visual, you know, if you will. Anyway, we are going to read, we're gonna finish, and then we will wrap this up. But this is great stuff. Alrighty, it's officially the cozy hour. We're gonna sit down now and do more reading. I say it's the cozy hour like I'm not reading a fantasy book. That's literally medieval horror. It's unbelievably grotesque, but time to get to it. Hi guys, it's Reagan, and welcome to the end of the vlog. The next day, I am so happy to report I finished the Trials of Empire, and I loved it. I loved, honestly, like every single second of this book. I just really enjoyed the entire journey. Like every single thing about this book completely hooked me, drew me in. I also really liked how the whole thing wrapped up. I felt like it was really fitting, hello Matilda, to the characters, the direction of the plot, just like the style of characters and everything. I just felt it was fitting. I will say I got to like the end and I just like kept flipping the pages, like hoping that there was more. And I don't know, leaving Helena behind stinks because I loved her and I loved how she rooted and centered this book. But I'm also really happy to report that for this highly anticipated release, right, Millie, that I have been dying for, and for a concluding novel in a series, I was not disappointed. And I had a lot of expectations going into this, and I just found it to be so good. Like, from the plot to the action to the characters to the arc of everything, I was thoroughly entertained, and I can wholeheartedly recommend this trilogy. If you haven't checked it out by Richard Swan, I highly implore you to do so because it was so spectacular. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with another one soon. Goodbye.